So welcome to this class. In this class, we'll be looking at Docker Registry. In the last class, we discussed the basic. We discussed extensively on Dockerfile, how to create a Dockerfile, the structure of a Dockerfile, and how to build an image from our Dockerfile. So if you want to refresh your knowledge on that, or you want to go through it, you can go to the description of this video to find a link to that tutorial. But in this class, we'll be looking at Docker Registry. So what exactly is Docker Registry? Docker Registry is a centralized storage and distributed system for collecting and managing Docker images. So features of Docker Registry can include stateless and scalable. They are organized into repositories where each repository contains multiple versions of an image. So in the Docker Container Registry, they are organized into repositories. So your container registry is made up of repositories. Each repository is made up of versions, or what we call tags of images. Now, they are accessible to users for pushing. That's by pushing, I mean uploading those images to the Docker Container Registry. You can also pull. By pulling, it means downloading those images. So, having built your Docker file to an image, it is important that you save this image to an environment where you can always access it and deploy at any time. So that's a platform that helps you store your images. It's called a Docker registry. And the popular among them is the Docker Hub. We have other ones like Azure Container Registry, but we'll look at them. But by default, the registry owned by Docker is called Docker Hub. So if you look at this diagram, you will see we have a Docker file. And then this Docker file is built into an image. If you run this image, you have an instance of that image, which is called a container. Now, you can push that image to a container registry like Docker Hub. And then whenever you want to access that image or need that image, you can pull that image down to wherever it is, your system. You can pull it to even your Azure Web App and the rest of it. And then you run that same image and you have a container, which is an instance of that image. So how do you now publish this image to Docker Hub? How do you push these images to Docker Hub? So publishing images to Docker Hub is an essential skill in DevOps and containerized deployment. So a clear step-by-step process of pushing your images to Docker Hub include: 1, you must have Docker first of all installed on your system as usual. Then you have to create an account on Docker Hub, and then you log in via your terminal. So we'll look at this practically, and then we'll see how to go about it. But first, if you have come to these tutorials, I'm sure you have Docker. If you have watch through my tutorials, I'm sure you already have Docker installed in your system. What some of you may not have is actually having an account on Docker Hub. Now, we have other container registries. We are talking about Docker Hub now, but we are still going to look at other container registries, right? Like Azure Container Registry, but now we're looking at Docker Hub. So while a Docker registry is an environment that helps us store our images, we have different types of it. We have the popular one, which is owned by Docker itself, Container Hub, and others, including Azure, AWS have their own, and Google has their own, and the rest of it. So this basically are the 3 steps. So let's see. So first of all, create an account on Docker Hub. When you create an account, you sign up for an account on Docker Hub, and then you can create a repository. And when you log into your Docker Hub, after signing up, you log into your Docker Hub, you can create a registry. That's optional. So now to create an image from the Docker and push it to your registry, first of all, you have to build that image, right? Like we did in the last class, Docker build the tag of the image. Now the image tag for you to push a Docker Hub will be your Docker Hub username / the repository which you intend to keep that image, and then the version. right? So the syntax to your tag is to your image very very important. It's your username, then your repository name slash your repository name, full column, your tag name or version. So the username is the Docker Hub name. The repository name is the intended repository name. So Docker Hub requires image to be tagged with your Docker Hub username. Very important. So before you push your image, you need to first of all log into a Docker Hub. And then when you log in, you can now push that image you have created to Docker Hub, right? So let's see this in practical. But before then, I want you to know these best practices. One, it's important you use semantic versioning. For example, 1.0, 1.1, something. So you can use it to trace how your build process goes. So avoid pushing large images. You can use ticket ignore to actually uh, ignore certain parts you don't want to be pushed to be part of the Docker process. Always add a README file to your repo in your Docker Hub, right? Okay, so let's demonstrate what we have just talked about. All right, so I am logged into my Docker Hub. If you're not logged, if you don't have a Docker Hub account, all you need to do is go to hub.docker.com and then sign up to create an account, right? It's just a simple process. You just sign up. But for me, I already have an account, so I'm signed into my account. And if you check here, you will see this is the username of my account 0645032. You can choose whatever username you want. You get so let me do something. Let's copy this and go to a different browser where I don't have it. Okay, so I'm in a different browser. If I enter dockerhub.com, you will see that it's telling me it said sign in, sign up. So if you don't have an account, all you need to do is to sign up to a Docker Hub, create an account for yourself, your work name, just follow to username, password. You can now sign up, right? And then you can sign in with that username and password. I'll return back to my own Docker Hub account. So as you can see, this is my Docker Hub account, and you can see I have some images already. These are repositories. You can see these are the different repositories on my account currently. If I enter into any of these, you can see these are images. I just have one image on this repository, but the tag is what v1, right? And it was uploaded 2 years ago. So there's no description. You can add a description to the image, which is part of the good practice, and describe what your image is all about. You can update. So subsequently, if you return back to your repository, it's clear what that image is all about. But let's return back and let's work. So I'm back to my Visual Studio Code. Remember in the last class we created this Docker file to actually host a static HTML image. So you can see this is it. We have an image. We have this image. We have this image. This is the HTML file. So first I'm going to build an image from this Docker file and then push that image to my Docker Hub account, right? So first I'll do the Docker. Remember, you have to have your Docker desktop if you're using Windows system, because currently I have my Docker desktop running. So Docker is running. So if to verify that, if I come here and say Docker dash dash version, you will see that I have Docker currently installed on my system. Let's see what images we have currently on our Docker. So I have these images. What I'm going to do is just to Docker image rm. I'll delete this image. So so that I'm going to be free of images. So I have this image deleted. Okay, so So I have this image deleted. If I do docker ls, you can see, so currently there is no image on my system. Now, so I want to build this image. So I'll say docker build, right? And we'll put an option which is a tag, and what tag do you want to give this image? Remember that I said if you want to push your image into your Docker Hub, it has a syntax, which is your username full call slash. So I'm go back, copy my user, go to my Docker, right, and then I'll copy my username. This is my username. I'm going to copy it, return back to my code. So this is Docker Hub, Docker build -t. My username is 0645032 slash then the repository. So if I go back to my page on repositories, you can see the repository we have, right? I'm going to create a new repository. You can create a new repository from here, but that's not data compulsory. If you define a repository on your code without creating it, Docker Hub will create that repository will be created on Docker Hub for you. So if it's an existing repository, then the image will just be pushed to that repository. So I'm going to name my repository first static HTML app, and then full column the version. So this is my first version. I'll call it version 1.0, and then build. So currently I'm trying to build an image, and then the tag I'm giving to the image is my Docker. The tag I'm giving to my image is my Docker build -t. The tag is 06, which is the username of my Docker Hub, and then the repository. I name my repository static. I think the spelling of the static is wrong. It should be static HTML app, right? And then full column the version. In this case, this is my first version, so I prefer to give 1.0, right? Remember that we said as best practice you give it semantic number. So if I build this, so it's going to build that image for me, right? So you can see it's in the process of building that image. So if I go back and do Docker image ls, I'm going to see that image being built already. You can see this is the image, and the tag is what? 1.0. Now I want to push this image to my Docker repository, right? So first of all, the first thing we need to do is to log in to login from our terminal. So if I do Docker login, enter, right? So say press enter, right? I'll copy this code just in case, but you say press enter to open your browser or submit your device here, right? So I can just press enter, right? And you go to my browser. You can see this was the code on my terminal, right? So all I do is to click confirm. If I do that and return back to my code, you can see let's wait for it to sign in from our terminal, right? So you can see login succeed. So our Docker will have succeeded in logging in to Docker from our terminal. Now the next thing we want to do is to push this image we have created to our Docker Hub. So let's check the image again. Docker image ls. So all I need to do is to come here and say Docker push, right? Docker push, and then this. So I'm pushing this, which is tag what 1.0. So this image will be pushed to a Docker account of username this, and with a repository this, and the version of that image will be 1.0. So if I do this, it has started pushing. So if I return back to currently to our Docker Hub account, you see if I reload, we're still trying to push. So it has finished pushing. If I reload now, we should see that repository created for us, right? So I'm going to reload. You can see this is the repository app. If I go enter into the repository, you can see we have 1.0. It was pushed less than a day, 5 minutes ago, right? 1.0. Supposing I make changes to this application, for example, if I return back here and I said, welcome to deploying this, I add some changes. Thank you, right? So if I say save, now I will need to build this image again, right? I'll need to build this again. So this time I'll change the version. So this is the latest version 2.0. So this 2.0 is an update of 1.0. So I'll build this image again. I have another image built. So that's one of the importance of versioning. So versioning gives you different version of your app, right? So rather than going to delete the previous version, you create a new version, update whatever update that is needed, and then you can create an image from the new update with a different version. So, but all the images is still about the same application. So if I build this, it's going to build a different version for me, which is 2.0, right? So let's continue. It has built that image. If I do Docker image ls, you can see we have the same image with different version. Now I can push this image now 2.0 to our Docker Hub, right? If I do that, it's being pushed. So we'll give it some time. It's done. So if I return back, currently we have one image. If I reload this page, right, if I refresh this page, and then you can see we now have 1.0 and 2.0 on our repository, right? So suppose this image have been pushed to our repository. This image has been pushed to our Docker hub account and to this repository. Now, supposing I want to deploy this application somewhere else, or I need to pull down this image to deploy. So first, I will delete the image we have currently on our system. So I'm going to do Docker image rm. So I'll delete these two images. So I have it deleted. If I do Docker ls, so I also need to delete this. Okay, so currently we don't have those images anymore. Now I want to pull those images back to our system, or it may be a case where you want to deploy the image on your production server or somewhere else. You just need the image back to, you want to pull that image back to your server or your system or whatever. So all I need to do is to do Docker pull, right? So I'll go back. This is our image, this is our username, and then the repository. Copy it, turn back here, and then specify the version I want. I want 2.0. Remember in our repository we have two versions, 2.0 and 1.0, right? So I'll return back here and pull that image. So it's going to go to Docker Hub and pull that image back to our server, right? So let's see. So if I do Docker image ls, you can see that image is currently on our server, right? Let's even run this image. Okay, let's run the container, the image. Let's create a container from that image. So if I do Docker image ls, so this is the image that was pulled from our Docker Hub. So to run this image, I'm going to do Docker container run, right? We need to want to create a container from that image, right? So Docker container run, and then the image which we want to create a container from, and then the version which is 2.0. So we want it to run in the background mode. We want to do a port mapping of port 7071 on our host system to port 80 on the container, right? So we're mapping 7071 to 80 on our container, right? So if I run this, you can see we have it created. So if I do Docker container ls, we see that this container has been created for us. So if I return back to my browser and I do localhost 7071, you can see welcome to this, thank you. So if I go back to our code, you can see that was the update we did, right? Now we added this thank you to version 2. Currently, if I do Docker image ls, see that we just have one image, right? Which was pulled from our Docker Hub, recall? Yeah. Now if I suppose I want to run 1.0, right? If I come back here, previously we pulled that image and then ran that image to create a container. What if I run this 1.0 and then I'll map point 7072, which is because a different application, to 80. Now I'm trying to run an image which is this .1.0. It doesn't exist on our system currently. You can see the image that exists is 2.0. So what the Docker demo will do is to go to Docker Hub, is to search on our system for that image. If it does not find that image, to try going to Docker Hub to look for that image, pull it before running it. So let's do this. You see, image not found locally. So that image is not found on our system. It's going to go to Docker Hub to try pull that version. You can see that's pulled it. So if I do Docker image ls, you can see that image have been pulled. 1.0 have been pulled. If I do Docker container ls, you can see the container is also running 7072. So if I return to our host machine, this was version 2. So this was version 2, right? For version 1, we map it to 7072. So let's look at 7072, right? If I run this, you can see welcome to deploy index with Docker. Why this one is this version 2. So in this class, we have succeeded in creating our image, pushing it to our Docker Hub account, and then we have also succeeded in pulling that image to our server or our system, and then run that image to a container. So I expect that you practice this on your own, create an account, create a Docker file, pull and create an image from it, and then push that image to your Docker Hub account. You can go to a different system or different server, and then pull that image down, run that image as container, right?